I'm Matt Glenn. You're watching 203K TV, where we're talking everything 203K and Fannie Mae HomeStyle. And today we're joined with Gary Gramling with In-Depth Inspection Services, and he is also a HUD consultant. So we're happy to have you here. Let's start off with a simple question: what is a HUD consultant?
A HUD consultant is usually an inspector, a home inspector, or someone who's got a significant construction background, who has satisfied HUD that he understands the intricacies of a 203K loan. And from there, they're the one who helps set up the actual loan itself by identifying what the construction needs are going to be, getting the pricing for that, working with the lender to make sure that all of the HUD requirements are taken care of, or the HomeStyle requirements are taken care of. And then the consultant will also perform the periodic draw inspections to make sure that the money that's being allocated for rehabilitation is actually going to that job and being done properly.
When do you typically get involved in the process?
Basically about the time that the borrower has tied up the property or seriously identified the property.
And who gets you involved typically? Is it the borrower? Is it the lender? How do you get reached out to?
Most often it's by the lender, although I have been contacted directly by a borrower, and then we went out and found a lender.
Yep. Okay, so you've been contacted by the lender. You're out at the property, meeting with the borrower.
Yes.
Tell me what happens from there.
Well, initially, what I'd like to do is just sit down and talk with the borrower, with the land buyer, and get a feel for what it is that they're hoping to accomplish. And like to do it on site because we've got the property, we can walk about it, and go from there. Once we've kind of gotten a feel for each other and they understand the process, then generally a full-scale home inspection is needed to identify what the current condition of the property is.
And being an inspector yourself, can you conduct that inspection, and do you typically conduct it?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And then, as I explained to the borrower, we're basically, with the inspection, we're looking at the gotta do's. What is it that you have to do to this house to make sure that it is up to HUD standards in terms of health and safety?
Some examples.
Well, we had a cracked slab recently where the house was literally leaning. It was on two different levels, and that was a gotta do. We, at the same time, we had problems with the plumbing, problems with, in part because of the cracked slab, and we also had outdated electrical. We had energy needs that needed to be satisfied, so we looked at the idea of replacing the single pane windows with the dual pane windows, things of that nature. So that's the gotta do list.
Yep.
And then we meet and talk with the borrower to identify their want to do list. What is it that they would like this house to look at like and be able to perform as once the job is 100% complete.
Yep.
And we combine those two, match that or send that list then to one or more contractors so that they can analyze it, come up with their bid.
So that's interesting. You're typically involved in a 203K loan really early, sometimes even before the contractor's chosen?
Yes.
Wow.
A lot of times I'm the one who recommends the contractor.
Got it.
And generally when that happens, I'll usually put together a list of 2 or 3 contractors that I've had experience with that I know that they can do this particular kind of work. And then recommend that the borrower meet with them, talk with them, get a feel for how they're going to interface with the contractor.
Yeah.
Because they may not like the person.
Yeah.
And that's going to make a very difficult program.
Why?
Well, because all of this really becomes a matter of trust and familiarity. And you've got to have confidence in your contractor that the home buyer needs to have confidence in the contractor that they can do the job and that they're going to actually treat the job properly, and that they can just talk to them and understand it.
Got it. Okay, so here's where I'm at. You've met with the buyers. You've walked the property. You've learned their need-to-dos and their want-to-dos. You sent that list off to a contractor. Now where?
Once we've got an acceptable bid, then I put together a complete budget and loan calculations. It's by line item using the contractor's bid, and we set that up so that you've got labor identified, you've got materials identified. We've got, we set up a contingency fund out of the total budget.
Yep.
So that when there's a surprise, then the surprise can be taken care of within the contingency.
Yep. How often is there a surprise?
It involves people and homes. There can be a surprise on every job.
Got it.
You know, it's the, oh, by the way. You know, and sometimes it's simply because when you open up a wall, because you had to change the plumbing, that you found other things inside that wall that you couldn't know. And so we try to plan for that by having the contingency fund. Once that's all put together, it gets turned over to the lender, and the lender does their underwriting and determines that they can make that loan to this particular borrower on this particular property, and then it proceeds.
Okay. So now we've been walked all the way through this buyer getting approved for the loan, and now it's their home, and then what?
Well, one of the other things we'll look at as we're looking at the overall budget is, will this house be in condition that they could live in it during the construction work, or if it's going to be unlivable for them during that time period.
And what's the awesome thing about if it's unlivable with these loans?
Then we're able to actually put aside in the loan budget an amount good for 6 months of living, of basically the rent.
Yeah. Yeah. So a buyer isn't forced to double pay
Right.
on their rent. They can actually live in an apartment while this is being renovated.
Correct. Correct. So we'll set that up. Most of the time, if it's a substantial renovation, then they're going to be living in an apartment or a house somewhere else nearby, probably. And the contractor's going to start his work. And once the work starts, in setting the program up, we will have identified up to 5 different times when the contractor can take a draw.
Right.
And each of those 5 requires an inspection by me to on-site to actually make sure that the materials that we're being asked to pay for are on-site, that they've actually been installed in many cases. Sometimes it's not yet installed, but it's on-site
Okay.
and secured.
What's the emphasis with it being on site?
Well, because I don't want to pay the borrower's money to material that may be ghost material. You know, and so we need to make sure that what's there is actually intended to be used for that job. I'm kind of the guardian of funds for both the borrower and the lender.
So tell me about that. What's your relationship become like then with the borrower throughout the process?
As I said, I'm their agent. I'm looking after the property
Yep.
for them,
Yep.
and also looking after the money in the loan for both them and the lender, to make sure that it's not being wasted, it's not being taken away on that, and so that at the very end, then we've got a job that was complete, hopefully within budget, at least up to the contingency money.
Yep.
And then also, I'll be asking, before I'll release any funds to the contractor, I'll be looking for lien releases so that the job is lien free at the end.
Yep.
Because the last thing we want to do is spend the money and then find that the contractor didn't pay the subcontractors or the suppliers. And so I'm looking for paid invoices, I'm looking for releases, preliminary lien releases from the subcontractors.
Let's talk about that really quick. So subcontractors are on the job.
Mm-hmm.
You're always aware of all of the subcontractors who are on the job?
Not on a day-to-day basis,
Okay.
but I'm aware of the subcontractors
Okay. Yeah.
because I'm not on the property daily.
Right. But subcontractors can also file a lien as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so, again, I need to make sure that those liens don't become real, so that the borrower, when it's all done, has a home that he can live in without being aggravated by bill collectors
Absolutely.
saying, I didn't get paid.
Yep. Yep. One thing that we think is so cool about this entire process is that someone like you is involved, because you're actually the overseer and the protector of a first-time home buyer or a first-time renovator, right? Who doesn't really know this process. That someone like you has the experience to step in, checks in with the contractor, make sure the work that he's doing is appropriate, and up to standards. And then you don't release the funds unless it is, correct?
Correct. And that doesn't happen until I've gone out there and physically walked the site and observed what was done. In addition to the city or county's building inspector looking at it, I'm going to be looking at it also to make sure that, in my opinion, it was done to the proper standards also, which might include the FHA standards, which in most cases are not more stringent than the building departments, but sometimes they can be.
Talk to me a little bit about the dynamic between permits, the building department, FHA standards, and how you navigate the three of those.
Well, the building department issues the permit.
Okay.
And they issue the permit only after they've reviewed the plans and make sure that it satisfies what that particular jurisdiction's current building code is. California updates its building code on about a 3-year basis, but the individual cities and counties are allowed to pick and choose some of those as to the activation date.
Got it.
And so we may actually have a state code that is stricter or different from the city code. And we've got to try to be aware of both.
Do you typically see homeowners looking to add square footage?
Sometimes.
Yeah. How's that?
That's easy. I just have been involved in one here in Chula Vista, and that's what they were doing. They were adding a new master bedroom and bath to a very small house.
Yeah.
And once again, you've got your building plans. The building plans get reviewed by the building official, the building department. Once the permits have been issued on that, then the contractor can begin work. The city or county inspector is going to be out there as often as the contractor calls him. And he may call him once a week, he may call him a couple of times a week, depending upon what the pace of construction is. I'll be out there, maybe I'm out there once a month, maybe I'm out there twice a month, again, depending upon what the rate of construction is as it's proceeding.
How fast do you typically see these projects completed?
Well, they have up to 6 months
Okay.
to complete, and from the time they start, and generally, a complex one is going to take the full 6 months.
Talk about your relationship with the contractor. Obviously, it's going to vary case by case, but what's the general relationship between both of you?
It's professional. They understand that I'm trained, that I've got knowledge of what they're doing, the intricacies of what they're doing. I'm generally respectful of them and their capabilities. A couple of times I haven't been, but generally I'm respectful.
With good reason, right?
With very good reason, to the point of actually removing a contractor from the job. Because they were essentially incompetent.
How so?
In terms of the quality of reframing a wall, hanging a beam, and also in one case they actually had taken materials off of the site and used it elsewhere and showed me an invoice, and I couldn't justify the material.
Wow.
So that doesn't happen
Fraud,
often.
right?
Fraud. It doesn't happen often, but that's part of my job
Yep.
on it. But generally, the relationship between the contractor and I, we try to make it good. And a lot of times I'll call them in between a draw inspection and just check up how's things going, what happened on this particular issue or something like that.
Talk to me about the second, third, and fourth draws, kind of the middle draws. We know the first one is they've bought all the materials are on site. And we know the fifth one is kind of the lien releases, grand finale. But 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, we're still getting lien releases on each of those.
Ah, okay.
Because if they've had workers on the job, subcontractors on the job, if they put materials on the job, then we still need to have those releases. We need to have those invoices that show that materials were actually paid for on that. So we have that. We have the list of what was supposed to be included in the draw. We talk about any changes that needed to be made because of surprises. And then I'm looking at the quality of the work.
Got it. We're getting close to wrapping up here. Tell us really quick just your qualifications.
Well, every HUD consultant is qualified differently because we come to this business differently. I've been in the real estate construction and management operations for about 40 years. I started in property management where I was responsible for inspecting a tenant's property, making repairs, things of that nature. I then went into a development company, got involved in real estate development. Ultimately, I went out on my own, licensed general contractor, started up my own construction company, and built a few hundred homes where I was literally in the trenches or on the roof supervising what was being done. Then essentially I've retired from the building business because the inspection and consulting business is full-time. And it just doesn't allow others. Other consultants, most consultants have had some construction background. They may not be general contractors, but they've been carpenters, or they've been plumbers, or something of that nature. So they've got familiarity with a construction site. And then, as I say, we have to undergo the certification by HUD and verification to them that we've actually got the ability.
Got it. Thank you so much for coming. You're awesome. Really,
My
really
pleasure.
good. Really appreciate it.
No problem.